Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Love Fruit podcast, a podcast for people who are interested in the raw vegan, fruitarian, low-fat raw vegan, or whatever you want to call it, raw foods, lifestyle, living foods, all of these different names. Basically, health, veganism, whatever. If you're interested in these things, we might have something interesting for you. And today we have another fantastic guest, an important, influential figure in the raw vegan, fruit-based culture movement. Yeah, absolutely.
Me?
Many of you probably recognize Chris Kendall from, obviously some of you from being at events all over the world where he's spoken at the UK Fruit Fest, I think 3 or 4 times. Also at the Danish Fresh Foods Festival, the Raw Food Festival in Sweden, the cruise. Were
Slovenia.
you part of the Slovenian festival?
Yeah.
Raw Food
Croatian
Croatian cruise. Woodstock Fruit Festival, of course, Canada Fruit Fest. I'm sure a whole number of other events. So you might have met him in person there. You may have seen him online on his YouTube channel, on the Raw Advantage, his website, Instagram as well, with a lot of followers. And so, Chris, how are things? Is there anything else you want to add to that people should know about?
Maybe Twitter and no, I'm just joking.
TikTok.
Yeah, no, I wish. That'd be pretty crazy. That'd be a little bit nerve. You know, that takes some nerve to do TED Talk. Kudos to people who do that. It's amazing. Hopefully one day. But yeah, you know, I'm doing pretty great. I'm a little stretched thin, I'll admit. You know, it's been a busy week and a half, and I'm in my busiest month of the year, to be honest. Just been updating the site, and I'm busy creating a new program and XYZ. But I'm here, I'm present, I'm feeling good, and I'm stoked to be talking to you and connecting with everyone here.
Yeah, let me say, Chris, like, obviously I'm not there with you in person, but I've, over the last few weeks even, and I mentioned this to you, but I don't know if you've changed anything recently, but you're looking really good. Obviously you've changed parts of your facial hair and stuff, but you're looking really good. You're looking happy, you're looking light, you're looking kind of stress-free. So anything changed recently? Are you just recovering from more from your injury in the last few years, or what's happening with you now?
Well, I'll tell you, if you saw me last night after doing 4 hours of website updates and then it all disappeared, I wasn't stress-free.
Oh, no.
Nothing like computer errors. That's probably my biggest stress in the world, is when you're trying to get stuff done to share and help people, and it, you know, you have to do it 3 or 4 times in a row. But no, you know, I'm feeling great. You know, I've really been focusing on getting more sleep, on cleaning up my diet and just making it simpler, especially since the new year. You know, I've had a pretty intense year and a half with my motorcycle accident, and have, you know, added a few things into my lifestyle, taken a few things out at different times, have really felt like it's a huge need to prioritize, you know, structured exercise and self-care to the 10th level. And on the 2nd, I had another surgery, and I'm healing another bone that was sawed apart and refixated with a plate. And I'm healing. I want to heal super quick because I have a retreat in March, and I want to be surfing, you know, and they literally just sawed bones apart in my leg. So I got to heal really quick. So with that, I've been really simplifying, just more sleep, no spices, really no irritants or anything like that, kind of going back hygienic style, loads of green smoothies, barley grass juice powder. I have added a little bit of more seaweed, just different varieties of seaweed for dense mineralization. Not because I was worried that I wasn't getting it, but just because, hey, if I'm repairing bones, I'm going to throw the whole book at it. And it resonated and felt like something fun to try and to add. So I sourced out good quality seaweeds. But, you know, that's really mostly it. I'm taking vitamin D and B12 because, again, vitamin D is so integral with bone healing and health. And I've been inside for the last couple of months here in Canada. It's minus 40 something today. So not getting much sunshine. So I want to make sure I have enough to really regrow bone and for bone health to the utmost, you know. But other than that, that's my job. You know, I mean, that's honestly what I consider my job, is self-care, and to live this lifestyle to the fullest and share and show people that you can not only live healthy, but you can live healthy compassionately in such a way where you're really creating the biggest waves out into your, you know, your community and into the social sphere. So
I love that.
that's what
I
I love
love
doing.
that you say that's your job. And I think it should be everyone's job as well to look after themselves. And let's get back though for some of the people that maybe haven't come across you, who are coming across this information for the first time. Maybe they might want to hear, how does a person become, as I know you are, a very committed, someone that's very committed to their health, who's made a lot of sacrifices, a lot of changes, a lot of transitions. You eat 100% raw diet for the last 15 years, I believe. So where did that all start? How did that process begin?
Well, it all started because I lost what I had. Like I was always a carefree, very joyous, like excited, passion-driven person. Like I can honestly say when I was younger, beyond obviously the little teeny things that can happen to anyone where you get upset about things not working your way, I was always very optimistic and happy and just loved life,
Yeah.
and all I did was skateboard and play, and my entire mission was just to skateboard and eventually become a professional. That's what I thought would be my calling, and everything I did geared towards that. Every kind of job I got, wherever I moved, my friendships really were based around skateboarding. And by the time I was 18, though, that skateboarding kind of, it was still the major part, but I was getting into drugs and into alcohol, into partying, and I was having a fun time at first, but it quickly went the other way, where I was doing that because I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't feeling happy. I wasn't feeling connected. I wasn't recovering well. I wasn't skateboarding at my highest. And I got depressed, and I was losing it. I didn't want to live anymore. I remember going on flights and literally praying for it to crash. Like, I'm not kidding. I'd be on the plane going crash, crash, crash.
Oh
Like,
my God.
and like, I wanted to. And I mean, that just reflects, like, I didn't care about anything or anyone. Like, I wanted the fucking plane to crash. Right. And I knew I needed something. So it was such a sharp contrast, and it was a slow transition to that. But when it got to a point, it really nosedived. And so I found yoga. That led me into the concepts of yogic kind of methodology around diet and nutrition and karma, which kind of got me interested in nutrition, which before I thought was a joke. My sister was a vegetarian for years, and I just laughed at her and like pretended as a T-Rex, and I thought it was silly. But I needed a shift, and I found a book called Fit for Life, which really opened my eyes to fruit and vegetable-based eating. It even mentions raw food and food combining. And, to make a long story short, I'm an A-type personality. When I find something that I feel works or that I'm interested in, if it hits me on a core level, there's certain truths that every single cell in your being just goes, yes, like you just resonate with, this is it, and that book hit me so hard. That's over 20 years ago now, that I started eating fruit for breakfast 20 years ago. I started food combining 20 years ago. I started, moving towards vegetarian and veganism 20 years ago. And I can say I've had like 5 or 6 cooked breakfasts since I read that book. No joke. I just took it on. Food combining became like, that's just what I did, and I've had 2 sick days in 20 years. I don't know almost anyone who's had that little sick days. And I've always had a robust system. I've always, been pretty focused and really have a strong mindset. But that book changed my life. And I just, from then on, once I got it, it's like, you can't unlearn it. Once I really understood how much of an impact diet and lifestyle and perspective have, it became the biggest passion. And eventually it superseded skateboarding. But that took about 5 years at first, and then a little bit longer for me to really dive full in and make this my career path, which was about 10 years ago.
And that kind of but what about the raw aspect of it, like going towards raw food? A lot of people obviously go towards some of the things you're talking about, eating more fruit and going towards a vegan diet and things like this. But what about the raw part of it? Where did you come across that, and why did that become your focus at one point?
Well, even the 20 years ago, that book Fit for Life, recommended fruit for breakfast, and if desired, fruit for lunch. And if you want, you could even do fruit for dinner. Like it really focused on fruit kind of being the optimal. So right from the beginning, that kind of got in my head was fruit in an uncooked raw state are really what we're designed for, right? So I just started incorporating more and more and more of that. And nutrition became the biggest passion. I was reading a book on nutrition, a book on fantasy, a book on spirituality or ethics at all times. I was just reading nonstop. And everything I read pointed towards uncooked raw fruits and vegetables, just more and more and more of it. So I continued that path. I was weight Buddhist by about 16 and a half years ago, but nothing completely tied it all together. You know, I was reading like David Wolf and Sun Food Diet Success System. I remember Nature's First Law was the first raw book I read that at the end of every chapter it says cooked food is poison, and it's very like vehement against cooked food. And I was like, yeah, this makes sense. Like, I got it. Cooked food's poison. You know, just like, this is it. But I couldn't apply it. I couldn't figure it out. And I was at that time just basically eating what would be considered now raw till 4, where I'd be eating fruit for breakfast, fruit for lunch, maybe a snack of fruit, but then I'd be eating yams or sweet potatoes and broccoli or the occasional vegan pizza, stuff like that. You know, and I went to school for nutrition. At that time, I got registered as a registered holistic nutritionist through the school CSNN, Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. And during that schooling, I went to a vegan health festival. And there was 3 raw food speakers there. And I was really excited about this because, again, I'd been high raw for over 6 months then. I was vegan. I was really interested in it. I wanted to go raw. I just couldn't get it. And the first speaker didn't really get me. Like, I thought it was interesting. But the second speaker was Dr. Doug Graham. And he was glowing, man, literally. And I don't say that lightly. It was everything just kind of met up for me. That was kind of just the point where my entire life really shifted, because before that, I was still doing this for skateboarding. I just wanted to heal faster so I could chuck my body downstairs and do a better trick and then hurt myself and heal, right? I didn't want to work as a nutritionist. I had zero interest, even though I was in school for it. I just wanted it for myself. I saw Doug and he was glowing. Like, he was just on fire. Every cell in my body was just like, listen to him. So I went to every one of his lectures. At the end of the night, I talked to him. He graciously gave me some of his time. And, you know, I asked him as many questions as I could. The next day I went raw vegan 100%. And within those first first 24 hours, my heart center burst open. I was crying walking down the street. Literally I connected with my purpose. I saw everyone as love, everyone as deserving of love and attention and care and compassion. And I just felt so open and so connected to source that, like, I was like, this is it. Like, I am love. This is it. This is what I'm here for. I want people to feel this. And many times throughout my life, I felt like if I could just tap people on the head and have them feel what I feel, it would make the biggest difference. Because in that moment, I was just like, I was glowing too. I was like a conduit of truth, and everything was working so well. I just knew it, man. My whole life shifted, right? I went back and I saw Doug again, talked to him, and, you know, it completely reprioritized my life where, okay, I'm going to be living a life of service to share this message. I want to learn more. I took 5 years where I really just applied this stuff, and I learned as much as I could from as many people as I could. Doug Graham had a support board at that time, Veg Source, which had like years and years and years of backlogged questions and Q&A, which he put hours into every day. And I spent 2 or 3 hours a day, every day for a couple of years, going over everything in there, trying to figure out the answers to any question I could possibly think of. And after 5 years, I came up against a big ultimatum with when I was in a relationship, that it was basically either like continue doing this path, you know, going down the road to becoming what I am now, or get a real job and eat cooked food. And I was just like, I'd rather die. Like, this is what I'm here for. Like, and it was tough, man. Like, that relationship, literally in that moment, I was like, you know, it was I thought we were going to get married kind of thing. It was the first time ever in my life I thought we were, but it was that big of an ultimatum where it's like, yeah, you can't just play around with this thing. And so we split, and I started the Raw Advantage. It's been 10 years, and that's just been my sole focus. It's now almost 11 years with the Raw Advantage. And I love it, man. It's super fun. And I do want to say a disclaimer, although for the last 15 and a half, 16 years almost now, I've been a raw foodist, and many of those years, even like, I think the longest stretch where I didn't have anything enter my mouth was about like 4 or 5 years, 100% raw. Minus maybe something like cinnamon. I do now sometimes have some things like peas, which are frozen, which would technically be blanched, you know, or I've had natto, which is a soya bean that is fermented, you know, which is technically a living food, but it comes from a cooked soya bean, right? But these are small parts of my diet, which I would consider, usually I say I'm 100% raw 99% of the time. But I do want to, just as a disclaimer, say those things so I don't put across anything that isn't 100% accurate.
Sure. I think we always want to make sure that we're kind of accurate in what we're saying. It's funny, I was recording an interview with someone else, and they wanted to make that clear as well. They were saying, sometimes I have nuts and they're not technically raw. So I get that. But I think that for most people coming to this, they understand what you're talking about. So
yeah, I do want to say, I think it's kind of funny too, because I used to, when I first was raw, I was very, very strictly hygienic, to the degree where I read some stuff talking about, like hot peppers or this or that. And I was genuinely curious. This is about 5 years into my raw food diet. I was genuinely curious, and I was like, I want to try a hot pepper. I haven't had one like literally for 5 years. And I remember going to the grocery store and looking at hot peppers, but then looking around and making sure no one saw me getting a hot pepper, because I actually felt guilty, because I was in kind of the mindset where hygienic is proper and right and something outside of it is wrong. And I think sometimes people within a raw food lifestyle can start to actually feel that way too, that raw food is right and anything outside of it is wrong and bad and can produce guilt, which then in turn can produce, like binge mentality and self-image issues and, a whole host of stressors in our life. And I've felt that. I've went through that over my last 15 plus years raw. And even having something like peas, there was a time where when I first had peas, I was like, I can't tell anyone this is a bad thing. I'm outside of the perfect raw kind of thing. And it's kind of funny to think what at one point would have almost been considered a cheat, now I just consider it a choice. I choose them because I love them and they feel good. But at one time, something that would be considered a cheat and maybe even looked down upon by people or is peas, which for many people would be considered like the most healthy thing that they eat if they're eating a standard diet, which is I think it's kind of fair to point that out and really look at ourselves and see what we're feeling. Because if we see someone eating something outside of our normal diet regime and we actually feel judgment or we feel guilt or we feel tightness around it, it's good to explore why we feel that and see if we can let it go. It doesn't mean you have to eat it, but to check ourselves on our emotional reaction to food and our feelings of how foods are set up and what it means for our well-being or our self-image.
Let me tell you about my little adventure with peas. So, like, I never really liked peas growing up, I got to say. I quite like sweet corn. That's what I would have. So the standard
sweet
meal,
corn's good.
Potatoes, some kind of meat or whatever, and then maybe sweet corn or peas. That's kind of a standard thing that we would have in our house growing up. But going raw, I never even really thought about peas. They were just kind of not even part of my thought or my idea. I was just so focused on getting the fruit part of it right and eating more vegetables and stuff. And then I did see someone was doing a presentation on a food demo, and they kind of said, well, if I can't get raw peas, I'll just use the frozen peas, and they were making a soup. And I just thought, okay. And then I was at their house and they made this pea soup, right? And I had it and I didn't really like it that much, or whatever, but I had it anyway. And then a couple of days later, I thought, I'll maybe have some peas. So I got some peas. And I thought, how can I make this a little bit better? So I added some tomato sauce to it or something, made a tomato sauce. And so maybe it was just like I had some peas in some dish. And then I thought, I quite just like the peas. So then I had the peas on their own. And then it became like massive bowls of pea, like just peas. So
you became a peatarian.
Yeah. This is an exposure into like how I am with food. Like I can get so like obsessed with things like that. And I was having like these bowls of just peas and adding and I started to do this practice where I added this sauce that was basically tomato and tahini, and I just mixed that all up into this big thing of peas, and I don't know how many calories that would have been, but I put
peas
on
are high calorie.
Yeah. I put on a lot of weight doing that, and the tahini added.
Oh,
and there was
absolutely.
a while where that was a daily thing I was doing for a long period of time, and I just got to a point where I was like, I literally
gotta cut them out.
I literally have no control over this. Like, and I was so I got to a point as well where I started to get like a red rash or something on my face, like whenever so it's like there must be something in peas that when you eat it to the degree I was doing it, some kind of toxin must build up, whatever that is, and then eventually it's just like I need to take a break. So that was what happened with me, like when I had that, but that's a reflection on me, like having massive bowls of them every day, and I just got to that point, and yeah, they're I mean, and that's the funny thing. It's like this, they're a delicious food. They are edible in a raw state. I mean, I always think about that's kind of my definition in a way, because people will say, well, nuts aren't raw because they're dried. And I say, yeah, but they are edible in their raw state. So yeah, they've been changed, but it's kind of like eating dried fruit. Okay, it's not all perfect or whatever, but it's edible, and it's so we don't have to. So the fact that it has been that peas or whatever have been heated or whatever, it's not the same as cooking something that is impossible to eat without the cooking process. Like, I think there's a difference there.
Yeah, and I mean, even realistically, the type of cooking and all those things, because I mean, blanched is quite different than fried, for example, or even blanched is quite different than cooked, boiled. Because blanched is typically just dipped in water that isn't boiling anymore for a short period of time to change the color and all that other stuff so that it freezes better. That's why they really do it, and also to reduce bacteria contamination. And I'm not trying to make a case for peas in the sense that I think everyone should have them or anything. There's something that I've added that I feel good about and I enjoy on occasion too. But I agree, like, have fresh peas from the garden, ridiculous. They're sweet and crunchy and delicious. And I think that's a good measure, as well as just what feels good to you. And like you said, when you found yourself unhealthily addicted to it, where you're drawn to it, then that's also a different scenario. Like, understanding why is that? Like, is there a nutritional component? Is there just an emotional component? Is there just a calorie component where it's easier to get your calories in that way and before you're subtly under eating? There's many layers to that. And I think in any situation, it pays to have a second hand or third hand kind of view and go through it and figure out what that is, because sometimes it's not as clear when we're right in it, and I know for myself too, like in my first even 7 years of raw food, I was way more prone to fall down the mountain if I had a little slip. Like if I gave myself an inch, I would take a mile. Whereas now, 16 years down the road, and I've shared this on my social media and stuff like that. My girlfriend, she's a cooked vegan chef, and I've tried a bite of a few of her cooked food dishes, and I could actually take a bite, enjoy it, not have an ounce of feeling bad or guilt, and not even have a slight inkling to want to eat a whole meal of it or care the next day. Whereas in the first few years, literally, if I took one bite, I'd want to binge for 3 days on everything that I've ever eaten in my entire life, right? And and I want to mention too, it's kind of funny because this year, because last year was a year where I had a couple more bites of cooked food than I had in the last 14 plus. This year I told myself, okay, well, this year I'm just going to simplify it. And, the furthest I'm going to go is to have some peas. And otherwise it's just simple and keeping it raw and really paying attention to sleep and all the other aspects of health, because I want to knock it out of the park. And, I too often see, when people are into this kind of lifestyle, they see how profound it is and they see how much of a difference it can make. But then sometimes they slip on their own self-care routine and aren't necessarily giving themselves enough sleep, or they're overstressing, feeling like the weight of the world's on their shoulders, and we're going to Armageddon, so we got to wake everyone up right now. And it's like, I think it's just so important to really focus on ourselves and take the time, the rest, the connection that we require to feel our absolute best, so we can radiate that out even more effectively. And that's what I want to do.
I mean, I think what I want to touch upon what you're saying there is, the idea of, like, for example, if someone is starting to go down their health journey and they're getting rid of various foods that are not optimal and all that, and if they were to say to me, for example, well, so I for example, like, I don't consume salt on a regular basis. I'll have it once in a while, but I don't like add it to my diet. I don't put it in my own recipes or whatever. But if I'm in a situation at a restaurant or something and they serve me a salad and it's got salt in it, sometimes I'll take it, sometimes I might not, but I don't mind it too much because I know that the next day I'm not going to wake up and start binging on salty food.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
when I started off, if I was in the first month or couple of months of giving up salt and I'd been given that opportunity and I'd allowed myself to do that, I probably would have went right back to having salt every day and going back. So I think there's something there in that, as you're saying, like if you're years into it and years into not consuming those things or whatever, then the occasional bite of something doesn't trigger you as much as it would if you were in your first year or 6 months or 3 months, of going raw.
Absolutely. And I mean, what it comes down to is just your own self be true and know thyself, right? It's like, if you know that you're an A type and that, that you tend to kind of get obsessed with certain things or like really intense into things, then sometimes it really pays to walk that tight rope. But for other people, they're a little bit more relaxed with it and they don't have that same kind of, yo-yo type mentality, right? And it's taken me a long time to go from that Richter scale to find my center, where I don't find that I go far outside of that center anymore, right?
Yeah.
But it's different it's different to a degree for everyone, but at the same time, there are certain generalities. And if you know your personality type, and if you have a good enough reason, like, if someone has like a chronic condition, well, it stands to reason to be as tight as you can. And at the same time, be relaxed in your attitude, but be tight with your plan. And
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just write that down. Be relaxed in your attitude, but tight in your plan. Yeah, I mean I was speaking to someone recently who's going raw, and I was talking to them about the fact that, listen, you're on a journey now, and you're probably going to fall off a bunch of times, but don't approach this with the attitude of like you've done something wrong. There's something wrong with you. You always fail. People have these stories inside themselves like, I can't do this. I'm not good enough for this. And these stories come up when they have challenges. And I was saying to her, you need to just understand you're a human being. It's difficult to do this. Almost everyone has made errors doing this and fallen off multiple times. And just approach it with like, this is the process. This is the process. Just keep going. So I love the idea of having a relaxed attitude, tight with your plan. That's how I interpret that, what you're saying there.
Yeah. And, it's like the reality being that everyone on every path is going to have some zigzags, like it's improbable that anyone just beelines from A to Z to their chosen mode of perfection. And, even the thought of perfection can kind of mess people up, because a lot of times people think perfection's a static thing. Like, once I have this and I'm perfect with this, well, no, perfection in my mind, at least, is a dance. It's a movement, it's a growth, it's a continual change.
Definitely.
And we're always perfect. It's just that perfection is always shifting and growing and changing based on our understanding. And it's through those failures and those slips that we actually understand, learn, and grow to know what we really truly want, right? So, the only difference between someone who's wildly successful and someone who's on their face is the person who's wildly successful got up and got up and got up every single time, brushed themselves off and said, this is the direction I'm going, right? The person who's just flat on their face took every single small deviation from their direction as a huge upset and as a failure, and then eventually gave up, right? So
yeah, and like you've made a phrase there that I like, perfect raw foodists, and to me, perfect raw foodists seem to only exist in online forums and in YouTube comments and stuff like that. and whether these or at raw vegan festivals for the period of the event, they're perfect raw foodist, or as Doug Graham might say, I'm a raw foodist between meals or whatever. And so the idea of like, I think that's funny in the movement that like I'm fairly open about things I eat and what I do and whatever. But for example, I've had times where I've been around people and they look at what I'm doing and they start to pick it apart. They start to say, why are you eating so many tomatoes? They aren't optimal. Why are you having
Yeah, yeah.
why are you having a salad? You should be a fruitarian and eat just fruit. And why you have, for example, something I do that other people might not like is I'll have pasteurized juice. I don't mind
Yeah.
having pasteurized juice. I don't make it a focus or whatever, but I'm happy if I want to, or haven't got enough fruit, whatever the reason is, I'll have a pasteurized
Mhm.
juice or a store bought juice, store bought smoothie, whatever it is. And other
Mhm.
people will be around me and going, why are you doing that? Why would you do that? That's not optimal. That's this and that. It's plastic. And I'm like,
Mhm.
there's a difference between being a long-term raw vegan and someone who's got a short-term enthusiasm about it and has a concept in their mind of what that means. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people kind of buy into this mystical thing that a raw foodist is like, this perfect thing of never making a slip up, never having a dehydrated whatever, and all that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. And I think
Basically
that,
shitting rainbows all day.
yeah, and like that, and I think they're almost disappointed when they actually meet. Like I've heard people say, I remember this story that when Doug Graham went to Australia, right, and he was doing a
Mhm.
tour of Australia and he was speaking, and I've heard that, like, I don't know if it was Freely or Harley or whatever, they were shocked when they saw him using tahini, right, and they were
Yeah.
just like that just totally destroyed their almost their vision of him as like this perfect, vision of raw or whatever. And I get that, like,
Mhm.
we have these principles, and Doug has these principles as well: whole, fresh, ripe, raw, organic. Um, but the reality of the thing is, I just feel the lifestyle is quite a normal thing to do now. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to go towards the 100% banana diet or never using a blender
No.
or
Yeah. And I
like,
mean, and all those things are fine, right? But like what it really comes down to is, are you living your true authentic self? Are you making choices that make you feel good and you feel good about those choices, right? Because at the beginning, like you said, it's kind of conceptual and it's like philosophical, and it's like fruit is nature's given food. It's the only thing we're designed for. Therefore, if I'm perfect, that's all I eat forever, and I glow, and I eventually won't eat anything, and I'll sit cross-legged and float, and people will go, "Oh my God!" It's like there's philosophy and there can be ego in there because we picture ourselves as being better if that's how we are. And no, I totally agree. And the thing is, like, we're all human, right? And we're all going through this human experience and we're doing the best we can. And, we're ultimately doing this so we can be more kind, compassionate, and congruent with our highest wants and beliefs and be happy and connected. And it is kind of funny when that does end up resulting in, nitpicking or judgment or anything else about anyone else. Because ultimately, this is about ourselves and our relationship with ourselves, our food, and, it's our path, right? And I can see the same thing. I know someone pretty well who was on the path of raw food and was really interested in it, and was following Doug Graham. And because their path beforehand was yoga and like enlightenment, and then they saw Doug and they thought, well, he's on the perfect diet, he
yeah,
should then be enlightened.
yeah.
When they met him in person and he was a regular human being with his regular human being things, and they all of a sudden were like, well, obviously raw food isn't it, because he's like the key raw food guy and he's not perfect enlightened. And then they actually stopped doing raw food completely just because
Yeah.
they thought that X equals Y equals Z. It's like,
Oh
that's not
yeah,
how
yeah.
life works.
At the
That's
same
not how
time,
life.
at the same time, Doug is a normal guy. He is also a special guy. Like, he is different. He does,
Thousand
he
times, yeah.
and but he does have a side to him that maybe people don't like. His kind of, uh, I don't know, because obviously he's a coach. He comes from a
Mhm.
background of athletics, of coaching, of that kind of strict attitude and stuff like that. So yeah,
He's an alpha as well,
sure,
and I mean, he's fully an alpha. And like, the thing about it as well is, if imagine if you for over 30 years have heard the same questions every single, like 1,000 times. Like, I've been doing this 16 years and I've heard questions millions of times. And when people, I can't imagine, like, he's got another like 20 years on me of hearing the same questions. And everyone has their moments, and everyone has like where they're like just completely immersed and compassionate. And other times people have moments where it's like, they're trying different ways of expressing it. And every way doesn't work for everyone, but
yeah,
sometimes you can word things in such a way that are
yeah.
taken personally, right? So
It's funny as well because he did this presentation one time where he went up and he said, so this is the questions you're going to ask. And he starts writing, he starts putting up, who wants to ask about this? Who wants to ask about this? And he puts up all the different topics,
Yeah.
And then he goes, okay, we're going to go through all this now, So as you said, he's got an answer for everything, and usually the answer is a very long, detailed one.
Absolutely.
Something you mentioned there a couple of minutes ago, the idea of the perfectionism, but also going towards the not eating, and that might be in line with the yoga thing as well. This is something that worries me so much, and really concerns me in this moment. And it goes along with the idea of not just seeing it as, hey, we're real people, this is a real diet, it works, it's grounded. It doesn't work because it's all energy or something. This is nutrition how it should be. And why are so many people, or I'd ask you, do you see this the same, that there's people who come to raw food who are into this breatharian idea of like, maybe someday I'll live without food. And, there's even people that promote this idea, they do retreats. Have you come across this in your coaching when you speak to people and at events and stuff?
Yeah, no, for sure I have. And I mean, I don't think it's like super prevalent, but I do see it absolutely. And I've met people who've gotten into scary places from it. And I mean, to me, one of the things is the more fantastical thing you can promote, the more people are going to be really drawn to it, especially people who are drawn to the fantastic, right? And, it again kind of comes back to philosophy, and, it mixes ego with spirituality and a whole bunch of other aspects in my mind. I mean, it can definitely come from a very pure place, but at the same time, it can come from a very egotistical place as well, to be heightened, to be enlightened in a way where you're better than. It's like looking at self now and saying, no, this isn't what I want. I want to be a perfect floating enlightened yogi, right? And whether or not there's truth to that, whether or not there was ever a time where the human species didn't, I mean, people write these things in philosophical kind of fantastical terms. To me, it's like, that's not where we are. And, having that as a goal only sets one up for disaster. If it was a natural progression, if that's even the case, then that might be a different story, but that's not something I promote or necessarily even believe in. I think, we're here in our physical bodies, and we are constructed with physical realities, and living in such a toxic world as we are right now, I understand why people want to detox at the most accelerated rate they possibly can, and why they want to let go of those things. But to me, that really generally ends up bringing people into, again, binge, purge, yo-yo type mentalities that end up not really serving their long-term health goals. And, I think part of it also, to be honest, kind of derives from the point of saying that, like caloric restriction increases longevity and all these things, which is a really inaccurate statement. And I don't say that lightly, because I know that some of the leading doctors in the world talk about that, but it's all a part of terminology, because, what caloric restriction is caloric restriction considered based upon the norm. That's not true caloric restriction. Because true caloric restriction would essentially mean we're eating less calories than we require, which eventually would lead us to a depleted state, which would eventually lead us to losing weight. More likely, the correct term, which would be more utilizable, would be caloric optimization, where we're actually getting the amount of calories we need.
Sure.
And, again, I have definitely met people that are, look like they're about to disappear and, are sunken looking, and you can see the ribs, because they believe that it's better to strive for that, like, really light perfection and eat less. And, it couldn't be further from the truth from what I've seen. I would personally always rather have a couple bites more and make sure I'm really genuinely full and be fully nourished, rather than be eating a couple bites less every meal and not be getting enough.
Yeah, I just think it's a scary thing to me, because I've seen it, and I can understand that it is appealing to people. And I've read some of those books, like Autobiography of a Yogi and stuff, where he talked about saints that didn't eat and things. So fair enough. I just, whenever I talk to people, I say to them, well, if it does exist, it's kind of like someone being able to fly or levitate or walk on water. and we don't see a lot of that. So yeah, there might be a person
No,
that kind of can be in two places at one time and all that stuff, but we don't really see it that we don't really
no.
ever basically ever see it. What happened in the raw food movement, or even the vegan movement over last year, maybe the last 2 years? People going back to eating meat and things like that. There was some prominent people. Um, any ideas why that was kind of happening? Do you feel like, and do you think anyone's starting to change or maybe go back, or what's your feeling around all that stuff that happened?
I mean, I have seen and heard some stories of people going one way and going back or going the other way, and I mean, I don't want to, in any way, shape or form say I know, because each individual has their own journey and has their own reasons, whether they're physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. There's layers to every single person's choice, right? And I mean, I could definitely say some commonalities, and I could say some things that I have personally seen with people who have went that route and came back, or otherwise who problem solved and never completely went that route, but instead solved it within raw food or veganism. But I think some of the things we have already kind of covered to some degree, like for example, if they believe in, like food-based purity and are very restrictive and, under eat total calories, or if they're really on that kind of mind frame of thinking like, everything except for fruit from the tree is bad. So they try and eat pretty much strictly fruitarian. If they have a restrictive mindset or a judgment-based mindset, and they're carrying a lot of stress within them, because people don't realize that as well. Like if we are doing this from a place of restriction of good and bad, and we're holding stress and we're holding judgment around things, that carries a real frequency within our body, which creates a whole cascade of stress effects. And that impacts us hormonally, it impacts our alkalinity reserves, it impacts everything. So I think those aspects, one, the physical, where people just aren't technically really doing it in a way that is conducive to optimal health, eating a lot of greens. They're doing it in a way where they're not relaxed about it and doing it because they want to. They're doing it because they think they should do it or that it's right. And if they don't do it, they have a lot of judgment on themselves, which, again, going back to, people don't usually have a straight B line. Usually there's some zigzagging. And if they're zigzagging and they're feeling guilty about it and they feel horrible about it and they're closet doing it, well, that's again, those are kind of eating disorder tendencies that can cause real effects in our body beyond the effects of the food itself. When people are completely opposed to any supplementation at all, and they don't take, say, vitamin B12, but they're actually becoming deficient, or, X, Y, and Z, I've seen that cause issues. I'm pretty relaxed with food groups. Like fruit and greens are my mainstay, but I love to have a variety of foods. And within that variety, like I do love mushrooms, and I do love, like sometimes sprouted things. And like, I'm not saying that those are reasons for my longevity, but I do think that it brings more nutrient diversity, which can help some people in the long term to have some of a relaxed attitude again. Beyond that, the one thing that I've mentioned before too is I really do believe that in this day and age, with all the stressors we have on us, from our food system, to the pollution, to electronic stresses from, 5G and all these other kinds of things, that we are in a place right now where we do have more to buffer than we ever had. And by buffering, I mean having a robust immune system, and two, having enough alkalinity in our system to buffer the acidity of these daily stressors. And I think that some people get into this lifestyle in a must detox as fast as humanly possible kind of attitude, where they're fasting and they're cleansing and they're juicing and they're, just eating fruit, and, they're doing all these things, which on the surface, they seem very like sensical. But in the reality of, we're coming into this lifestyle from a place where we've already had a lot of stored wastes and traumas and emotional stagnation. To try and release all of it at once can burn through reserves, can be trying on the system, can be very trying physically, mentally, and emotionally. And for some people, that's too much. And, I'm really personally in favor of the slow and steady wins the race, whether that means you still have a fairly quick transition or whether that means you have a longer transition. including lots of greens, and not feeling like you have to try and reach physical purity in as short period of time as humanly possible. Those are some of the things that I think jump out to me as reasons why people in now can have troubles on the raw food diet, and maybe even go to that extreme of one to the other.
For sure. I mean, to me, the things that we've always seen as people not eating enough, under eating, and that just never stops. It's like people still, and I think there's a thing, Chris, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think sometimes even when you work with people and they know what you eat and they know how you eat, and you're telling them what they're doing, but I think there's still a resistance in people sometimes, especially when you're saying, okay, well, if you need this amount of calories, then this is the amount of fruit you need to eat. And if you actually give them that amount and show them what that is, you can get that resistance from people who are like, really? That sounds like a lot. Like, they still don't fully, like, a lot of people don't buy into it. Even people that we would think have really got into this lifestyle know a lot about it. I think there's a lot of people, as you're saying, that have always kind of under eaten or never quite eaten enough, ended up eating too much fat, the common kind of thing, and and going down that route.
I mean, it takes, like, if you're just subtly under eating, like, again, like, what I often say is, if you look at that fruit and you feel like you could have another bite or a piece, do it. But I think a lot of times people eat until they're like, yeah, I'm good, but they don't have that extra little bit. And let's say you're missing 100 calories a day. Well, you're missing 100 calories a day. At the end of 2 weeks, that's 1,400 calories, and it ends up in a peanut butter binge, right? And then you feel awful about it. You think, why me? Why am I like this? Oh my God, something's wrong. Maybe I'm missing something. And all it came down to is just subtly under eating, or subtly under eating greens, or I think the other thing though too, really, and I think this is a big thing, is just not really having a good relationship with self, not having a good relationship with food, because if we don't, we're going to be looking to food our problems, but it never does. It's just a temporary good feeling. And I
remember I was just thinking there about one of the first times I ran like a small event, and so it was a lot of stress. Like, there's about 25 people or something at this event, at this campsite, and we didn't have a chef, really. We didn't have blenders. We just got fruit and vegetables. Like, we told everyone that it's just gonna be really simple. So I was obviously working at it a lot. At that time, I was really strict low fat, and I've went on a bit of a journey where I've went on times where I've been really high fat. I much prefer the low fat, so I'm back to that. But like, then it was, and it not because of dogmatic, but I didn't really like avocados, so I didn't have avocados at the time. I didn't have nuts and seeds, so my diet was super, super low fat. And over that weekend, I remember when I was driving home, so you're kind of going on the adrenaline or whatever of looking after all these people and all the socializing and all that. On the drive back, I went to the service station and I saw this packet of pistachios. And I was like, I've not had any pistachios in a while. Let's see what they taste like. And like, that led to me eating the entire like tub of pistachios as I'm driving, right? And it wasn't just that. It's like, I don't know if you've ever done this thing where you've been driving or something and you're eating while driving, but you're almost doing it, and like almost the food is more important than watching the road. Like, so you're like,
oh shit.
Yeah, like I'm taking my hands off the wheel to shell another few pistachios. Then, like that's dangerous. Really that's my problem with food sometimes. So I think I like, as you're saying, under eating over a couple of days, not realizing it, and then being totally prone to like some kind of binge. And
I mean, when you're really immersed in something you're enjoying, or it's the highest priority, it's easy to undereat. That's why, I mean, when people get into a workflow and they're just working, they think, oh my God, I didn't even eat lunch, you're so immersed in it. And, if that happens consistently, then it's going to, again, either it's going to lead you to under eating throughout a day, and then after a couple of weeks end up in a binge, or it's going to end up under eating throughout that day and then eating more at night, which then leads you to feeling groggy and crappy in the morning and not eating till later in the day in the morning again. And that ends up creating this cycle where we're eating inopportune times for proper body functions. Because if we're not eating our first meal until 1 or 2, and then we're eating our dinner at 8 or 9, and then we're sleeping with a full stomach, we're not getting the most out of the diet either, right? So
absolutely. So I just want to change the subject a little bit. So I want to point out to the audience that this is purely an interview that was set up because we want to get everyone's story out there and get more raw vegans out there and get people to hear this on the podcast and everything. But Chris, I am aware that you've got a retreat coming up, and this wasn't designed as an interview to help promote the retreat. That's not what we sat down to do. We didn't even talk about that. But I would love people to go to your retreat. I would love people to tell me that they went along to your thing because of hearing it from us or whatever that would be. I would really enjoy the fact that we've been able to touch someone and let them know about it. I mean, I've heard a lot of good things about your retreats in Costa Rica. I think you've got one coming up. What is the kind of power of a retreat? Why are people so drawn to it, and why is the experience so fulfilling to people?
Well, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate that. And I only have 4 spots left, so that's real. And it's February 28th till March 7th. But the reason why people, I think, are really drawn to it is because it's complete immersion. It's just like you're full on with it. You totally feel at home. Everyone's doing the same thing as you. It's kind of the same as a festival, right? Like there's no questions, there's no judgment, there's no whys around what you're doing. And in fact, you're around people who've been doing it for longer, most likely, who have answers to questions that no one else might have, and that you can feel totally at home asking anything and not feel weird about, right? Everything becomes normalized. And there is just such a power in being, again, totally immersed with community, doing the exact same things, so you can just relax and let go and feel normal and get those questions answered and just live it. Instead of reading about it or seeing it on a forum where you got 50 different opinions. Instead, you're just doing it. And beyond that is, where else do you get an all-inclusive raw vegan holiday where you're in the tropics, you're having a blast, everything's taken care of, and you don't have to worry at all about food. In fact, you get to taste and enjoy and learn how to make food that you actually would want to make, right? Because you could even go to an all-inclusive, cruise, which I've done. I've done like a Disney cruise, and that was a really amazing experience. Or you could do like a resort all-inclusive and, have juices and have some fruit platters and go to buffets and stuff. But it's very different than going to an all-inclusive raw retreat where you have a chef, that is actually making some of your favorite or the stuff you've seen online, raw vegan cuisine, right? And so I think that's kind of why.
Yeah, I mean, totally,
otherwise maybe they might have saw my muscles or something and been like, "Oh, I want to get close to those." I'm not. No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this, and it saddens me a little bit that in the raw vegan community, and I totally understand it. But if someone has a retreat, and let's say the retreat is a reasonable price that covers that, is just there to cover accommodation, cover food, cover all this stuff that's there, and make sure everything works out. You can get a lot of people saying, "Oh my God, these retreats are so expensive," or "These people are like," you get all these kind of comments, and I'm like, just compare it to other retreats,
anything else,
other holidays, other resorts. Like, they're offering you so much less, but they're like. So I was literally going through a travel brochure and just looking at tons and tons of things that were way more, double the price or just as expensive as retreats that I've seen offered, and I can't imagine the values anywhere near the same. Like the idea that someone's going to get a better experience going to like some resort where it's just a whole random bunch of people that just want to hang out and drink alcohol and binge on food and like be in the sun. Like, it is such an amazing experience if you're a raw vegan, like, and I say this to a lot of people as well. I know that a lot of people want to go to Thailand or the tropics or go somewhere, or Costa Rica even, and like go there for 6 months, and they might be like, "Oh, for the price of that retreat, I can go somewhere for 2 years." Like, yeah, you probably kind of could go somewhere, or in reality, you'd have more
Couple
expenses.
months anyway.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
reality, you'd have more expenses and things would pop up and you might have to pay for more things. But the experience is so much more powerful. And I've tried to say this to people as well, like, there is no place in Thailand that there's going to be that kind of experience. There's no place in Costa Rica that there's just all fruitarians all hanging out. That only happens at events, retreats, the festivals and stuff. And to add on, like, not just raw vegan food, but Chris as an incredible chef, like a really talented, creative raw vegan chef, and all the stuff that goes into that. Like, it's a no-brainer. So I hope that a lot of people jump on that, and hopefully you can do more. Like, why not? Like, maybe you can do 2 next year, 3 the next year, whatever, and
I hope so.
do a whole season.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you know what I mean? The way I look at it too is like, you know, I've had people come on my retreats. This is my 10th The Farm of Life, and I've done 3 others, so it's my 13th retreat. But I've had retreats where people, they didn't even care about the raw food component.
Sure.
They didn't want no education. They just wanted the adventure, and it was bar none. Like at the end of every retreat, I ask, you know, I give out a survey and I ask, like, you know, was it priced well? Is like, did you get what you looked for? And I've never had anyone say anything other than it was priced great. You know, like everyone really feels that it was they got everything they wanted out of it more. And if you're looking for education, if you're looking to change your life, you know, like, I mean, I was just talking with someone the other day, and, you know, this information can completely change people's life. I mean, it changed my life 110%. And it can be the actual kind of launch pad of your entire life changing for the better and preventing, you know, a lifetime of illness or, you know, of anything, right? So it's like, it really depends on what you're going for and your reasons for doing it and your perspective of what you're able to get, because what you get is decided upon by you, you know? So I really hope to see more people out there. Again, I only have 4 extra spots left in a bunkhouse, and you can learn a ton more at therawadvantage.com/retreats, or just message me directly. But it's coming up soon, and the most I've ever done is 3 retreats in 1 year. And I would love to be doing about 4 per year, different styles of retreats in different locations around the world. But right now my focus is on just making sure that the retreats I have a decent amount of people, you know, like at least like 8 to 10 people at the retreat. So I'm imagining, and I'm putting it out there, that the desire is only going to grow, and that more and more people are going to want to join me in different places for raw food, yoga, surfing, skateboarding, culinary skills. You know, not necessarily every single one of those at every retreat, but at least 2 or 3 of those at every retreat, and mix it up and enjoy in different ways and help people as many ways as I can.
Amazing. And I these experiences are so, I mean, like, it's what I do a lot as well with the fruit festival. And I was thinking about this morning, that I'll have conversations with people, and I guess with everyone's passionate about the thing they do and about the events they put on and stuff, but involved in this movement, we know how powerful in terms of changing a person's life, in terms of reversing diseases, reversing conditions that the raw vegan diet can be. So when I'm on the phone with someone, or talking, or whatever, emailing, and they're like, yeah, maybe and I hear about their story, they maybe tell me about their, whether it's diabetes, heart condition, all these really terminal kind of conditions, they've got problems. And then they'll say something like, yeah, well, I might come next year or the year after, like, I'm getting a new car soon and I've got to buy this or that. And I'm just like, I just can't even understand
You just don't get it. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I totally get what you're saying.
And but then you get another person that's like, and you're like, so what's your interest in this? They're like, well, I don't know. I've never done raw food before. I'm not a vegan. I'm just kind of curious about it. Just saw something about it online or whatever. And then they're like, yeah, I'm coming. Yeah, just put me down for it. You're like, what? This person doesn't seem to have any like motivation, reason, history. Like, it's just so funny. There's just some people that it calls to, and some people that, I guess,
exactly
doesn't, you know?
It's where people's priorities are, right? And if they're can-do people, or, you know, you're going to put it off people, right? And I'm not trying to like segregate people into groups by any means, but it just is amazing. You know, it's either an attitude of, okay, this is worth it, this is a priority to me, I'm going to make it happen, And whether that means it's a retreat, or whether that means it's coaching, or whether that means it's just connecting with people that have the answers you're looking for and taking it seriously and applying it in your life, there's always ways of making it happen. And there is just something really special and profound, and it impacts people in such a huge way when they come and are immersed 100% in it at festivals and retreats. It's just, you know, I mean, like I said, my first exposure was just an event, a live event though, but I got to hang out like one-on-one with Doug and talk with him. And those moments can change your life. And imagine having that for a full week, you know,
there's nothing that replaces that. Yeah. There's nothing that replaces the one-to-one contact. And because I don't know if there is something about picking up on someone's energy or their vibe or their vibration, but I mean, I used to have times where I would speak to Doug and then I would go away and I'd be like, man, I really want to eat bananas now. And it was like, you know, just stuff like that where I'd be like, I would speak to him and then really want to take care of my health. I'd be like, I'm picking up something from this guy just from his presence, you know. And so anyhow, we're coming to kind of the end here. I believe that if people go to your website, they can get a whole bunch of free stuff as well. Like you've got some books there, they're part of your newsletter, I think. So the rawadvantage.com is where people can get that stuff, and then that's your Instagram if they want to follow you there, and so on.
Yeah. I'd like to mention too, I got it's all on my website, but I have a free app that has like over 100 free recipes, food combining charts, information on simple tips to apply a raw food, healthy, holistic diet, and lots of videos. And, you know, can get the lowest prices as in-app purchases for the rest of my books. I got like 7 books on there, I believe. So that's all on my site as well, just therawadvantage.com. And I got all my links there.
That's so excellent, Chris. And what I would say is we've talked about it a little bit, but we don't know if you're going to be able to get to the Fruit Fest in the UK this year because you're still healing. You've got work to do. You've got appointments, rehab.
I'm really hoping to. And my plan is to make it happen. It does in part depend upon our doctors, both me and Camilla, who were in the accident together.
Sure.
The schedule they put us on for, you know, following up with them and doing all this other stuff. I'll be in Sweden, it looks like, until, April, May, and June. But the end of June, I have to leave. And so that means either I go to the UK for a month until the festival, or I go home. But I'm putting it out there that my intention is to stay in the UK and come to the festival. But right now it's a little bit out of my hands, and I can't say 100%.
Well, that's great. I mean, and if people want to learn more about that festival or about what we're doing, fruitfest.co.uk, you can check that out. And I don't know if there'll be spaces left by the time this goes out, but you can go and check there and see if it's still there's still some spaces left, and check that all out. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. I'm sure we'll be interviewing Chris again. We've not even touched on even the 10th of the information that Chris has got to share with you. So, but get over to Chris's website as well, the Raw Advantage, and take the leap. We're not getting anything out of this. This isn't a promotional thing for us, but I really just want you to have that experience, the experience that I've had and other people have had of going to these events, of being around people, of getting the raw food, and of making that change to your life, because it's a really powerful thing. So therawadvantage.com if you want more information on that. So thank you very much for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on another episode of the podcast.
Ooh, baby, I like it raw. Thanks, Ronnie.
Thanks, Chris.
Peace.